Welcome to the March edition of the TEL Researchers at Lancaster series with Dr. Kyungmee Lee. I'm very excited today. I'm just very excited. But before I introduce Dr. Lee to you guys, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. So I'm Pui-Yin Wong, one of the organizers behind the series. And I'm also a doctoral student on the PhD in e-research and technology enhanced learning. I would also like to introduce John to you, who is, there we go, John, who's a moderator today.
So hi, I'm John Brindle, also a student in e-research and TEL, doing my PhD. Also work for the University of Liverpool as an educational developer.
I would now like to introduce you to Dr. Kyungmee Lee, who is a senior lecturer in educational research at Lancaster University. So she's one of our very amazing supervisors on the program. She's also the co-director of for the Center of Technology Enhanced Learning. So, our collaborator of this series. And she's also the co-editor for the Studies in Technology Enhanced Learning, or Study in TEL, which is a open access online journal of TEL focused research publication. Highly recommended journal, even if I'm saying so myself. So without further ado, I would like to hand the stage over to Dr. Lee to talk about her amazing research practice.
All right, thank you so much for coming. I know everyone is busy, especially after all these years of COVID pandemic, that's like having people all together online. We just appreciate that a lot. So thanks for coming. I just want this to be really conversational, as you know that it's always nice to chat about what we're doing, how we're feeling, and to fellow students and colleagues and so on. So it's going to be very ordinary TEL conversation about those topics that, as you can see on the screen, which is Foucault, Autoethnography and writing, which are very ordinary. But I just had to think about the title, and reason that I put ordinary there is not necessarily probably topic itself is something that you would associate with the TEL conversation. However, I just wanted to stress that how ordinary we are as a human being. And we do TEL research, but as a researcher, I think it's really important for us to share how tiny we are and what are the struggles that we are having in our daily practice, not as a researcher, but also not only as a researcher, but only as many different things that we are having in our life. So that's why I'm pretty happy with this new initiative. So thanks to organizer for doing it. As you know, that I really like to talk about us and myself and you. So it's really good that it's not about TEL research, but it's about TEL researcher. I think we need more opportunity to talk about ourselves to each other. So that's kind of my brief title introduction, and I'll just go over some of the thoughts that I have over the year that I developed my scholarship. I consider myself still as very junior or just new. I just feel like I just finished my doctoral and I'm still quite new to the field. However, I had to really deal with some of the struggles and anxiety as a TEL researcher because I couldn't really make sense of what's going on. It's just so many things are going on. So today I just want to share about my journey and how eventually I made sense of the practice I involved or I committed myself to for probably the rest of my life, and how I kind of carved different discourses that can work for myself. So I hope that's helpful for you. But so let me start the conversation. So just let me ask, how are you doing, guys? I can see some familiar faces. Are you doing all right?
You're doing very well.
Sure. Come on. So are you doing your best? 100% or 70%? Well, it depends on which area that we're talking about, isn't it? 85, that's good, decent. 50, yeah, that's more likely. 100%, oh, come on, JB, you can't be. So we're all kind of doing our best as a TEL researcher or practitioners. Like, I know that you do a lot of things yourself in your daily, workplace, and we really try hard. But do you really think that everything is working well for you or for anyone that you care about? So if you ask the same question, like, how am I doing? I have to just say that I'm so tired. I'm just tired all the time. I'm just exhausted. And I think being a TEL researcher is like worst mistake that I've ever made, because things are just too quick. And I don't know, I always feel like I have to catch up. The people are so ahead and people move on to different topics, talking about new things. And I don't know. I feel pretty tired and exhausted, and a lot of things happening in my personal life, not to talk about TEL. It's just tiring life. And it's really difficult for us to really enjoy the research. I mean, except for probably JB, I'm sorry that but it's just, that's how the life is for everyone, according to Foucault. There's lots of stuff like that. So how the history has been developed, although human being is excited about the fact that we are enlightened, we know more, we're just creating the knowledge, we feel like pretty empowered. However, what we're doing eventually, we're making our life more and more difficult for ourselves and for the people who tend to care, who we tend to care. So that's kind of what Foucauldian understanding of historical development of humanity and human being. So I think as a TEL researcher, his idea is pretty relevant to us, because we're really center of all the discourse that he has been pointed out as how humanity is developed over time. And well, I hope that you can, so this conversation can be helpful. You can join me anytime if you have any comments and questions. But today, my conversation, as you already noticed for the first past 5 minutes, it's all going to be about struggle. So the struggle, how struggle has become the main theme that I really care about, both in my personal life and in my research / teaching, because I do teaching and research together, tightly connected to. So if you kind of expect some futuristic and magical research skills, this is not a session for you. I mean, don't cry in the middle, but we'll see how that goes. So part one, I just want to talk about this guy whose name is Foucault. Of course, that this is not going to be a session about him. There's so many better teachers who can talk about and teach you what the Foucauldian theory is better than me. So I'm not the person who can talk about his idea. But I just want to say that for me, struggle is something, I don't know what's wrong with me, but as a human being, I'm pretty sensitive, and I do feel struggled quite a bit at different moments of my life. And then to Foucault, he was the same, because he's, whatever the reasons, that his identity and sexuality, he's been very struggling person and very disturbed person as himself. So for him, his research is all about him trying to figure out why he feels struggles all the time. So that's his entire life journey of his research. So Foucault, to me, he told me these things: the struggle is the evidence of the power relationship. So he taught me that if I feel struggle, it's not my fault. It's not like me doing something less. It's not me doing less than 100%. It's just struggle is the evidence of power relationship. And danger here, especially in the modern society, is that power relationship is not fully obvious. So we don't feel like we're actually oppressed under power relationship. We don't really realize that even we are a part of power relationship, we contribute a lot to power relationship, make other people's life miserable. And then we are part of it, feeling miserable because of this relationship. But the problem in the most modern society, or post-modern, we can't see it. Power relationship is very, very sophisticated, hidden, and it's very implicit. So that's why it's very difficult for us to know exactly why we are feeling like in that way we are. And then it's quite easy for us to try to put the effort to create our own enemies to fight against. Anyway, so the power to Foucault list is not a thing anymore. It used to be a thing probably years ago when we had a monarchy and kingdom. When king has, like, potentially we can just argue that king has the power to put under people. So people are totally under control physically, So people they can't use their body freely because all the conditions that they were in. And then back then, power can be, we can say the power is a thing. Certain group of people possess the power and they utilize the power and they oppressed people. But that was like years ago. And then now what happened in terms of the power is and even the political party doesn't own any power fully, and no one. Sometimes we think about capitalist and we think the capitalist is the enemy of the entire capitalism and neoliberal critic when we do it. But who are the capitalists? I'm pretty sure some of them are your friends too. So there's no one group of people that we can just point out and put the finger and saying those people are making everything so difficult. It's not like that. Power is a process. And then the historical development made power to be networked more than a thing. So this is kind of basic idea that Foucault has about the power. So that's why some people find Foucault really, really depressing, because as you can see, entire Earth and globe is under, and it's a part of power network. So there is no way for you to go. And so previously, if you avoid the king, and then you can just go and went into your hut, you can do whatever you wanted to. But now, in our daily life, we're under power impact, and that where the power is coming from, we don't know unless we sit down and analyze. So we feel always pressured and feel like 100%, but that's because we're in the network of power relations. That's the basic thesis of Foucault. And again, history is not, so all the futuristic historical claims about technological development and so on, which is central part of TEL research community, which is actually, it's difficult because that's really core part of our identity. Why are we here as a TEL research? Because we know technology is developing and technology has a great potential in people's life. And we want the person and people who want to utilize the power of technology and help other people to do well and do better in their life. That's why that's the entire mission that TEL community has, and we have developed the mission over time. However, if you think about the history from Foucault's eyes, it's not like that. No matter what we do in terms of new technology, human life is getting more and more bizarrely difficult. So history, the futuristic idea of history is not really working for Foucault. And so it's this simple kind of argumentation that technology is developing and human life will get better. I mean, no one is having that, unsophisticated claim anymore. We are critical enough to be able to say something opposite as well. However, the entire kind of paradigm that the TEL community is sitting on is probably quite problematic, according to Foucault. And then we often experience it in our life. So it happened to me as well. As some of you may know that I used to be a learning designer, and then I used to be called a learning specialist. I was pretty young. I started my job when I was 23 or 4. And then they called me e-learning specialist, and I didn't know what that meant even. But anyway, so when I walked into university and start this job as a learning specialist and so on, that was in 2001. Imagine how things were 2001. Do you remember? I'm pretty sure that all of your historical being at least in this group, which is nice, isn't it? Everyone was there, right, in 2001. If you try to remember what happened back then, it's like everyone was so happy and excited, wasn't it? We were kind of facing new millennium. No one was talking about COVID pandemic or anything. It was all very positive. And, everyone was just excited. Being into the new millennium of 2000 itself gives us great hypes. And a lot of futuristic claims were made. And e-learning is one of the representation of or materialized item of that excitement around the time. So when I started undergrad study, in education technology department, I learned e-learning, and none of the people even who taught me have done e-learning. And then actually, I remember I sit into the computer lab and create an email account. And then we were kind of talking about it, and we thought like, this is really cool. We don't have to print it out and submit it to the office. we can just send the email to the professor. Wow, that's cool. That was, what happened in 2001. I'm pretty sure you had that excitement experience by yourself too. And then all the textbook and things were talking a lot of different things about e-learning. And I'll probably show you some of this that's still around. So accessibility is top, essence of e-learning, and peer-to-peer learning, and collaborative knowledge construction, and pedagogical innovation, and democratic learning environment, because people talk to each other, how democratic it is. Everyone can voice up there, no matter what. Their race doesn't matter, age doesn't matter, everyone is equal on online setting. And technology innovation, it goes up. And then interactivity, critical thinking, somehow people start to talk and openly about the political views that they have and worldview, and they exchange those ideas, and then they become critical. And deep learning and lifelong learning. So these are just key terms that I had in my textbook. It was like entire textbook of 300 pages of e-learning and computer-based instruction. That's what we called back then. It was chapter by chapter about the essence of e-learning. So these are all introduced in that sense. So it's really nice, isn't it? I mean, none of this is problematic if you look into it. And then by now, at this moment, we finished the COVID, and then we know how laughable some of these are. E-learning after even 20 years later is not like, some of them are not like this at all. But anyway, that's what I learned from the school. And then I went into my industry and workplace as an e-learning specialist. How naive I was. Can you imagine, I was like ready to do everything in the way that e-learning should look like. And reality is that I've been like talking. Another thing that I have related to struggles is this theory and practice gap, or discourse and reality gap, or research and practice gap, whatever you want to call it. There's huge disjunction between what I have thought about e-learning can do and what I was asked to do at the company. So I designed and developed these online courses for the employees of the big company. And then they were like totally different things, a different creature that I had to sit down and create it. And people reaction was not at all I expected. So I don't really go deeper about this gap, because I'm pretty sure by now you know what those gaps look like in your life too. So even the very first publication, I know some of you wanted to read it, but I'm going to refuse to share it because I'm so embarrassed. It's super embarrassing that what I wrote and how I wrote about it. So even my master, it was one of my master's projects. Can you just read the title of it? How pathetic. Why do professors refuse to use constructive teaching methodology? And you can just hear me just being very angry and saying that, how dare people do not use project-based learning or problem-based learning. PBL is way to go. And they're killing creativity of all their students. It was quite a aggressive, now I'm looking at, statements written there based on how things should be, based on what I learned from, the university, and based on what I observed in terms of the gap. So before I start my PhD and being a scholar like myself now, it was all about everything is so perfectly, neatly, matched. It's just a little piece, something is clankily not working. So things are perfect. So now the theory is perfect. And I have to figure out how to change the people and change the practice. If I find that little piece and put it in, the education will be innovative and it will be really good. A lot of people will get, I was a little bit like that when I started my PhD. It was 2009, I believe, or 10, I could remember. And I was all about like problem solver mindset. And then after 5 years of PhD and meeting Foucault and learning about and doing autoethnography myself, my conclusion was just massness. It's not like that. And there is nothing like this scene existing in TEL. And it was just little pieces, and every single piece is talking about and claiming something about technology or enhancement or learning. And I just sat down and couldn't really figure out what is the overlay or what is coherent or consistent narrative I can just make out of these pieces. Anyway, so it was kind of fast forwarded, but I'll go back to online learning a little bit to help and to unpack it a little bit, and I'll make sure that I'll explain something about Foucault in this context. So again, e-learning, when I learned about it as theory, wasn't there. It was 2001 to 3. Not many people were doing e-learning. So that means there was not a practice existing already. So how people could write a textbook of 300 pages about e-learning? So all this beautiful terminology that you're seeing at the end of the arrows were what? Imagination of those people thinking that e-learning can do. There was no deep learning. These are not like evidence-based claims about e-learning, and no one have experienced it enough. And how come people can say these things? And then the Foucault helped me to turn the arrows the other way around. Like that, e-learning is certainly just concept coined as the outcome of discursive practice of the people in that era of millennium. And all these terms were existing somewhere else. And they tried to associate this to the medium of technology, which is internet, and that any behaviors and any human practice mediated by the internet technology, they wanted to claim that it's futuristic, and all this good essence or criteria and characteristic we've been missing throughout entire humanity will be realized by this single technology, which is called e-learning or internet more broadly. So internet here, I'm not really talking about a little browser, but internet technology, how it has been developed across 90s. And then 2000, if you remember, it was time that people were actually taking up, it comes into our house. So all these conversations existing outside come into e-learning, try to shape conceptually e-learning. And then that's what was happening around the era that I was in. And then, for example, just one example, let's say lifelong learning, it's really hard. If you look at the adult education literature, it was starting from 80s when people were talking about self-regulated learning and so on. And then lifelong learning, and the key theme, and all discourse about the society of lifelong learning. Have you, lifelong learning society? Have you a learning society? There's books like people start to write about it. And then it's pretty much descriptive. It procedures and practice how people should live their life. I don't want to put too much heavy weight here, but lifelong learning is something the society wants us to be as a lifelong learner, to learn the new skills and keep up with all these changes and contribute to society. It's very strong imperative about how human beings should behave in the current society. And peer-to-peer learning or democratic learning environment, all of these notions are not really coming from e-learning, it's coming from outside. And then how a human desire to change the world in a way that it's much more progressive and democratic, and that it all got into e-learning. And then according to Foucault's formula, what is happening is just picking up the lifelong learning again. So power relationship is so gentle if you look into. There's no one standing up there and telling you that you have to learn every single day. No one is going to sign up for you. I mean, no one is going to give you the task without you knowing it. This is not at all anything that you have to obligated doing it. However, what happened is that the entire conversation and this hidden pressure that you're going to get in terms of lifelong learning to be promoted, you need to get better for a certificate. You have to know the knowledge is updating too quick, so you have to catch up. Otherwise, you're going to be outdated. You're not going to be a useful person and citizen. And all this conversation going on in society makes you feel like lifelong learner is what you want. And then it goes around. And that it's very specific tactics or techniques or technologies, which is they don't really push anything in terms of they don't really touch you physically. They don't do anything in terms of your life daily practice, but it's just you eventually who is going to manage your daily life and practice, regulate yourself and discipline yourself, and to be someone what the society wants you to be. And then you are pretty tired, isn't it? Like you do all those things and you feel tired, but who is the enemy in here? There is no one. So this was one example that Foucault described how lifelong learning society as the discourse or literary is oppressive upon people. And then a lot of people actually are buying into that kind of thoughts without really having any evidence or necessity. However, that's how subjects and human subject is governed in the new society. And then why it's important, because of that behavior, that kind of a mechanism, how power works in our life, we meet a lot of subjects. We meet a lot of human subjects. So this is one example coming from my dissertation, and then including myself. So what happened? This is a period of when at the particular Open University, when they tried to change the medium of education from paper-based to online-based, and all the e-learning claims that I have looked into, it was really big, and then everyone's talking about it rhetorically, at least at the Open University. And then this is what happened in the Open University. And there are a lot of power relation going on. However, there is none of them are really having power. So first of all, like myself, unheard learning designer is suffering there because, of course, learning should be done online because online is so good. Have you just seen that slide, how good that is? So that's what we want to do. We want to move entire Open University online, and then students will be critical, and then they will do deep learning, and we will help every single person around the world to be access to, better university education and so on. So let's go for all this human subject created by that kind of circumstances. So it was me, unheard learning designer or e-learning specialist, you can call, and then I'm here and I'm trying to do this. That's my job, and no one wants to do it, especially around time. Like it was the data that I collected, it was 2013. So it was not like 2001 or 2, but still after 10 years, people still don't want to do it. So my daily life was pretty miserable. And there's resisting old-fashioned academic. Who called them old-fashioned is probably me, who felt like they're very old-fashioned. They just want to write textbook and ask people just read textbook, how old-fashioned that is. But they don't want to do what I asked them to do. That's all right. But they said that they are suffering too. And I'll follow leading TEL researcher. I'm interviewing this, leading TEL researcher that I name and all. He's publishing bloody a lot of books and papers. We're all citing, even now you guys are citing. However, at the institution that no one listened to him, he's trying to propose all these e-learning things, but he's not followed. So he's pretty miserable. Unwanted textbook editor. So textbook editor, they have been hired a bunch of textbook editors because they've been producing textbook after textbook for those 40 years of history of Open University. But textbook editor is not anymore wanted, at least by a learning designer. They feel pretty difficult. And then we are saying that you have to learn technology. Textbook is finished. And then we have another huge group of people who we call disadvantaged student, unreachable by online. As you can imagine, some online. I had to explain this 2 years ago when I presented at the conference, but I don't have to do it now because we all know during COVID that people are not having access to internet. We can't take that for granted. So I have a lot of group of students who can't do e-learning and struggling unprepared students. There are also the people that we are having and dealing with that just are walked into Open University and they're struggling. And they're struggling because of their academically unprepared, but their life circumstance doesn't allow them to have the secure the good enough time to work. As we all know. and juggling lifelong learner. I don't know why they're there. They feel like they have to get an additional degree to make sure that they contribute to society, and they're juggling life, like they're struggling, and isolated distance learner. So, I mean, these are just subjects that I can quickly come up with. So what have happened is that just let's go back to the initial idea of the contradiction. So it's discourse as it is telling great future and historical development associated with development of e-learning and online education or internet technology. However, in real life, what those discourses actually creating is very neatly connected power relationship between all these lay people, if you like. None of us is having particular power. None of us are trying to do anything bad to each other intentionally. All of these people living in their life and trying to do 100% probably with their own belief system, but it just doesn't work, and that it comes as a struggle. And then power relationship is, you know, is equally having impact upon all these people. It sounds pretty miserable now, I realize. I mean, there should be some happy subject here, but I don't know, I didn't think that I have to put it. But anyway, so why this conversation? I'm pretty sure that it's not very probably comprehensive explanation. So if some part is a bit frankly not what makes sense, maybe we need more conversation later in the Q&A, or even you go and read Foucault. He's a nice guy. So we're facing this era called post-humanism or post-humanism. I mean, no matter what you like it. So this is the era that we're witnessing at this very moment, all the things that I have experienced in 2000s with the e-learning. So post-human is really about how humanism had been a problem. So we've been living with this word, in the word that human is a center, and people don't like it anymore. You know, humans should be a part of it, and we should coexist with nature, animal, and then machine as well. That's post-humanism in a way that how humanity has been changed. But if you look at the second one, when the hyphen is moved to, you know, the end of just before ism, it's about like what it means by post-human. So we're not human in the same sense that how we have been, because like there is something scary going on, or there's something exciting thing going on based on where you are. So this is the discourse that we're facing at the moment, and then you will probably understand after this conversation why Foucauldian understanding of historical development related to technology, it can be quite dangerous and also relevant to current situation that we're facing as a TEL researcher. So there are a lot of claims that one thing that I have to point out is one different things between now and how we were with the e-learning. I think now a lot of conversation we're having is so much more divergent. So in a way that no one is really technological determinist, in a way that no one is saying technology is just awesome thing, it will change everything. That's a bit not balanced. And no one's like technological essentialism. If you know the Heidegger, for example, he was like critiquing technology and machine, that technology has essence of destroying humanity. So he was quite scared about technology in his writing, but no one does that anymore. But technological instrumentalism, no one thinks that technology is totally natural. It's just too simply we can use it, because you look at the AI, they're learning by themselves. So we can't use the technological instrumentalism. And social constructivism as well. A lot of people are understanding human who is making the tool and human who is using the tool and evaluating those tools have a political aim. So that's what the social constructivist is seeing it. So I have to just say that it's not really black and white anymore as it used to be. It's like so many more sophisticated conversations going on about post-humanism. However, it's quite divided. So there are so many people excited about big data, and like it's just like enlightening entire humanity. We know so much more. And then if you know this Moore's law, for example, that every second year that the knowledge that we have is doubled up, and you saw the graph is like going crazy. So, and then huge possibility, and happy about it. But at the same time, people questioning ethically and critically that who owns. So their data is out there, but data is not turning into knowledge as it is. So someone has to like hack it, and someone has to analyze it. It requires quite a bit of skills. And I have to say that I don't have that skills. Then who has that skill? And then who owns those data? There's a lot of questions going on. So people are critical. And everyone is connected to social media, and everyone in chat. Everyone can share their opinions about politics, and the revolution happening in some of the Middle Eastern countries. It has been phrased as a great kind of evidence for a digitalized democracy going on. However, at the same time, people are saying that people can't even focus on anything more meaningful or deep for 10 minutes. So we have to make every single video less than 15 minutes, because including ourselves can't even watch it. And then at the same time, social media, I mean, you know how that works, because big data give you the opinions that you would like. So you will actually, although you're in the social media, but you will never debate anything meaningfully. So human enhancement, the human capacity is going to be going up, because now human doesn't have to be wielding, because machine is doing better without any accuracy, I mean, without any error. So 99% accuracy is what machine can do, why human has to spend their time. And human enhancement in a way that human body, especially those people whose body, some of the body capacity was not 100% before, and they can enhance their body. And then not only physically, we can get the help, our physical, not only our physical capacity can be enhanced, but also our psychological, emotional capacity can be enhanced. We're looking into a little like learning robot, especially relevant to TEL, because we now get the help. And then, but people are still scared about this possibility that our data is always like used and misused and collected without us knowing it, and we're always consistently under a monitoring system. And the robot, I mean, do you trust that if they can learn by themselves? I mean, who's gonna are they gonna help us or even attack us? We don't really know. So there is conversation like going on. So if you look at all this conversation, it's just kind of little scrap of it. It's just a lot messy. So remember the puzzles that I put on, and then those puzzles that I feel like there's just so many puzzles about like e-learning. That was only 500 pieces puzzle. But now we're dealing with this post-humanity and a lot of technology that even in our as an education technologist that we couldn't quite understand 100% the mechanism behind it. And then it's probably, I don't know, 3,000 pieces are so much more complex. That's what is happening right now. And then that's what we are signing off for, because I every day got the proposal who wants to do PhD with me. They're like AI enhanced learning they want to study throughout their PhD. It's just every single day. It's not like future anymore for us, because us being a TEL researcher and us, especially myself, being seen as someone who's technologically savvy to the potential PhD student want to do those things with me. And then it's so irony that those conversations are going on, but we're just walking out of online learning experience during COVID-19, which is just saying different things. I mean, we've been asked to just join online. Everything has happened online, but that was a lot of struggles that we experienced by ourselves. And then we know that digitally how connected we are, but how divided we are too. So going back to this issue of struggle, I have to say that as a human being, as a TEL researcher, I feel struggled. I'm stressed because I don't know. I don't have much capacity to make sense of all of this. And then when I especially use the theory or understanding like Foucault suggested, something is going pretty bad here. And that's my research agenda. Like, so that's why I'm interested in post-humanism. I don't know what kind of power relationship post-humanism discourse, as opposed to discourse and non-discourse material conditions that will create for human being and for myself and for my students. That's what I'm interested in. And I'm pretty much using Foucault to analyze the hidden kind of power relationship exercised by this in this condition, and what kind of subjectivities will be created in this situation, and what their struggles are, including mine as a TEL researcher. So here it is, the last few pages. I didn't talk a lot of Foucault, but I think that Foucault part was heavy because that was initial kind of bump that I wanted to throw to you. And then where autoethnography is coming is that Foucault gives me good overview and cautionary view to look into all the conversation I have in my daily practice. And then now, I do care about my own struggles, as you know, and then I do care about struggles of the people that I have concerned, and how I see. So all the subjectivities that created within any circumstance. So you walk into any institute at any historical moment, and then you can see a lot of those people you can just name. And that's what qualitative researchers are doing. We interview people, we categorize them, we give name to them. That's semantic analysis we call. And, you know, I'm certain you're here, but you call, like, you name the teachers as updated software. I mean, that's what they see themselves to be in the smart education period. So we come across as a researcher in the TEL field, a lot of those new subjects and subjectifications, subjectivities or identity in very lower sense of simplistic way of saying. Just new people seeing themselves in a particular way and being seen by others in particular way is created consistently along with the technological advance or change. And then that's the heart of the research. And how we know, I mean, how are we gonna, what kind of research methods are you gonna use to look into it? Well, I mean, big data is out there, you know, go and try to understand the struggles of each individual. Good luck with that. So autoethnography, just in case some of you may not really heard about, just brief kind of definition as this is active writing, very political act about oneself, about researcher or researchers close others in order to explore and make sense of their own emotion experience relation to their surrounding culture. So self and their relationship with the cultural, and in my context, dominant discourse and technological surrounding, and then write about it. That's what autoetnographers are doing. And I find this methodology working great for me because the messiness that I have, in terms of, so in this current climate that like everyone want me to look into data, big data, because data has better idea, and then I can even use some artificial intelligent technology to look into data more smart way, maybe. But I will refuse to do so because I want to focus on its subject, and then it's understanding what they're going through and their relationship and hidden power relationship having and creating the struggling experience in their life. I can't really use the big data to understand that. Maybe in the future, but I hope that not in my lifetime. So for me, autoethnography is very natural choice, that because I want to, in the messy, in those like 3,000 pieces, I just want to start with the one piece and look into it, how that makes sense. I may be able to look into, you know, the one person and surrounding culture a little bit, but I will never be able to make 3,000 pieces all set because it's not possible. I mean, that's not the life that we are having in the current society. So I'm not that ambitious, but at least I can pick up one piece and make sense of that person's surrounding. And then my Foucauldian approach to analyzing those struggles give its unique narrative that's empowering that than any others, in my view. So I do write a lot. I mean, if you know me, I just write a lot. And I have to say, some of my students are thinking that I just write like robot, because I do write a little bit, probably more than other people. But I have to say writing is a struggle. It's not because writing itself as a practice, it's a struggle, but I don't know. I mean, my writing, what I like to write is always not a happy story. And I find myself really unhappy about myself if I did something in my class, for example, with my doctoral student who are like you, and then I did something, and then if I only report all the positive things, how awesome I was, how awesome my methodology work, how great these PhD students are turning to be someone else that they were, that's not really my interest. So my writing is struggle in the sense that it's just hard work. But at the same time, what I care about, what I'm writing about is often make me feel quite unsure about myself and challenging myself. And I put myself vulnerably out there, telling my real thinking and feeling toward my students, my colleagues openly. But that's my writing. So I'll say that's struggle. However, it's just brilliant how I can connect Foucault's understanding of how power works. I refuse to use just simple identity politics. I don't want to say that a certain group of people have this type of experiences. I just want to care about that person that I'm looking into. So that person may have come with certain cultural cue that I may produce some narrative that can be understandable by people coming from very similar background. However, it's not what I would be interested in writing in that way. So sometimes I feel like, and then, so my writing in a way that I focus a lot on interpersonal issues as a mediated factor between what Foucault is saying, because it's too big for me to comprehend, but the same, but one person that I start with in terms of my conversation, it's just small to give the meaningful narrative. So I have to expand it to the culture as I share with some of you. And then what I am doing in terms of writing is basically developing internally persuasive discourses. So this is Mikhail Bakhtin's idea, who is Russian linguist. But I think what I'm trying to do as a TEL researcher that who is living in the moment of exponential increase of discursive claims about technology and education, everything, whether it's critical or not critical, or it doesn't matter. It's just so messy. A lot of people have different opinions. Where I'm going to stand in, I can't make my decision unless I write about very specific case, a person's experience, and I'll probably develop internally persuade discourses. It will be changed all the time, depends on who I talk about. But that's how I see as the potential, fundamental aim of my writing that makes connection between Foucauldian, analysis of the power relationship, which at the very macro level, it comes down quite micro, but it's quite macro kind of mechanism and narrative of the society. And then autoethnography, which is really about mundane person's experience and struggles as an individual. And I find that very satisfying, enjoyable, which is difficult, but that's what I do in my daily practice. So that's all I prepare in terms of all my mumble. So I'm happy to stop here and probably stop sharing. And I will let probably it's John who is going to read the discussion. I will be happy to be led at this moment. Thank you.
I actually had a question, Kyungmee, myself, and I've put it into the chat as well. And actually, some people have responded, which is really cool. So yeah, you mentioned about being unsure of yourself and things like that. Do you think that actually that's an important quality in a researcher? Do you think it kind of enhances curiosity for yourself?
Yeah, I think so, because I don't know how it's come. It's I think they basically never really trust any claim on face value. I think that's really what I'm really interested in when I hear someone talking about AI in particular way. I'm very unsure about what I really believe, because I don't have any belief in, those. I don't have, rather than having my own opinion about AI, I'm pretty much interested in how that kind of claim about AI will change the pedagogical relationship that I enjoy right now. So yeah, I think pretty much you're right in terms of that kind of way of looking at different claims about TEL kind of made me write different things at a time.
Oh, thanks. No, that's really interesting. No, it was really interesting, and some of the response in the chat. I think Vicky in particular put something in the chat which was really interesting as well, and that she's always right as well, which is great.
It's Sukaina here. I don't have a question. It's more about, sorry, I can't put my camera on today. It's more about the way you presented. I love the idea that you use images to bring your thoughts. Could you, and I know that you are very much passionate about technology and the way power struggles. I love the way you included Foucault as well. Would you be able to sort of tell us about how you went through the journey of making the right image suitable to your thoughts? Because it sounds very interesting.
Well, that's a good question. Thank you so much for comment as well, Skyna. Well, I don't know. Well, that's a good question. I've never thought about it. I just type, I think, okay, maybe I know. I don't really think carefully about what I'm going to say. I just have keywords usually. So I start my PPT slides and I put some keywords and find images. And I kind of organize and reorganize those images in the order that I think my narrative will make sense potentially to other people and to myself when I practice. So yeah, I don't spend a lot of time to find a perfect images. That's quite stressful. I tend to find the images that I think pretty and kind of I have some style that I like, kind of empty and things like that. So I collect a lot of those images around the keywords that I want to mention during my presentation, and then I use that to actually shape my narrative by putting them in the order. So I've been changing images many times. So am I answering to your question?
No, that's great. It's interesting to know, because again, it shows the power struggle between getting the right thought and right image as well. So it goes back to who's actually got the power. Are you handling that power in the knowledge, or are you leaving the reader to interpret what you want them to read? So thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you. I think that your interpretation is better than what I have done, but I appreciate that. Thanks.
I think JB has a question for you. So JB, would you like to ask?
Hey, yes. So I fully appreciate how it's important to have a critical view of TEL, especially if the word enhanced. I really appreciate how you bring this philosophical view to the field with Foucault, for example. And I think it's really important. I see too many overly positive things about technology every day, which can be frustrating. But to pick up on what you said, you mentioned the problem solvers at some point, and you talked about the gap between theory and practice, about the discourse and the reality. Can you use Foucault's teaching in not only in a way to criticize all these issues, but also trying to use it in a positive way to somehow improve some aspect of our practices, even though we can't change everything like this? Can you use it in a more positive way, for example, to change the way the faculty lives the digitization, which is very complex for them?
Definitely, JB. Not necessarily only by Foucault. It's not that Foucault is just a depressing person by himself, but his interest was stopped at the moment that he was trying to, so he was quite a young scholar when he died, in a way that he was, so he was passionate about the analyzing that social structure and power structure, and he'd been writing a lot. And toward the end of his life, actually, he's trying to develop this notion of the self-ethics and care, the self-care. So how you can pretty much develop your internally persuasive discourse that actually is suitable for you. So you can be critical about all this pressure that you're having and you're aware of it and be able to create your own thing. So I guess if Foucault has another 5 years of his life, he could actually produce some of the good tools for us to use. But Foucault hasn't done that. That's why autoethnography is very important for me. So as we all kind of talked about, autoethnography, ultimate aim of doing it is to make our life better. And first step for us to understand and make our life better is to understand where the struggles are coming from. So entire presentation that I'm doing today, I have done today, is my autoethnographic journey that I've been feeling struggled. I didn't know the reason. I find the reason. I became kind of aware of why I'm so stressed and feeling helpless in my practice. And then knowing that it was first step. And second step was, I'm not like always moaning, as you know, I use technology freely to this extent. However, now I can do this. What I do is I can select what I want to do rather than being pressured to use technology for the sake of using it, as people are saying that it's awesome. I would say, no, I don't want that technology because I know that a lot of those things are actually claims, not evident. So I think that's how we can use Foucault from his perspective. And then I have to just say the last comment is just being able to have certain big picture about being able to aware of the hidden power relationship bothering you. That's really first step. And then from that, you can liberate yourself. And Foucault himself was saying something like you can create your own discourse too, but that's the second step that each of us should help each other, maybe. I don't know. So is that okay, JP?
Thank you very much for that. Yes.
Good. So okay, I can.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, have you that's fine. If you have to take another question, Kyungmee. I think Sejin.
Thank you for your really great presentation. And my question is, I wonder if you could share any topics that catch your attention but haven't been quite developed yet in relation to what you presented today.
Oh, well, a lot. I mean, I have little writing notes, like have a lot of ideas that every time I feel like that's something I have to write, I just don't have time and I forget.
So I can still use some of your ideas.
Come on, we can work together on the post-humanism. I mean, I'm really interested in the AI claims right now. I'm looking at it. So I'm really interested in AI, and people think that I know the AI techniques. I don't have any idea about how AI works, but I'm really interested in analyzing discourses around AI. That should be my next project. I will be very happy to do so.
I'm also quite interested in AI. And discourses in AI. So yeah, thank you.
I'm just starting working on AI actually, and it's quite funny how people claim that the AI understands everything with natural language understanding, and when I test it, it's just simple voice recognition. It's pretty basic yet. We've been talking for years about it, but it's not yet well developed.
Yeah.
So we have a really interesting question that's come up in the chat. And I think we've discussed this when we were doing autoethnography on the program as well, which is quite cool. So how can it's Karanki? How can an autoethnographer know they are not just writing about themselves and unloading, but actually doing beneficial research? But then Vicky has said, what is beneficial research is another deeper question that you can ask about that as well.
Well, that's a really good question, Cranky. I wish that I can have really sharp answer for you, but I don't. So, I mean, in the line with Vicky's question as well, it's very difficult to know what is beneficial or not, to which extent, to whom, and everything is quite up in the air. However, I have to really say that we've been really trying hard in my module with some of you. So basically, it's quite often. So research is research in a way that we want to tell the story that hasn't been heard. And the power of autoethnography is all about that, the going deeper into some secret, but it doesn't have to be dirty secret, of course, that it's like, it doesn't, you know, however, the things that when you take more even qualitative data research approach, or the quantitative research approach in particular, that the stories that you would never discovered. And then, so autoethnography should be autoethnography, not for the sake of autoethnography, and then you just want to talk about yourself, but it should be really about that you just, hello, I can see you now. You really can tell the stories that can be only told by doing autoethnography. And if you, that should be your aim, so to do so. And then apparently, of course, that by nature, it solved a little bit of issue why of the purpose of doing autoethnography, because it's certainly something new. At the same time, we work really hard with our students. We in the module too, that if it's going to be just all yourself, and you stop talking about your emotion and you're just talking about your own reflection upon your experience and then try to publish it, that's no. That's why you have to make connection between your experience to culture surrounding that where you are in, and you should be able to provide the narrative can be understandable to other people and appreciable by other people who are going to read them, not only because you just share your secret, but because your secret gives the insight about how social structure and how power relationship in the society that makes you suffer from visible to the reader. So so it's quite political writing in that way. And if you hit that, aim, I think it's great autoethnography that you can argue that it has contributed to, the field for sure. Good.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Thanks. All right. John?
Does anybody else? Yeah, does anybody else have any questions at all or thoughts that they'd like to share? There's some interesting chats about autoethnography in the chat actually as well. So if you wanted more, I put a little reflection that I thought, even though I spelled autoethnography wrong, I can see that now. I spelled it as 2 words, but never mind. But yeah, there was Sejin's also commented as well there. Anybody got any other questions or thoughts? No?
I mean, it doesn't have to be a question.
Can I ask you a question? Am I allowed to ask a question? I feel like I need to ask this question before I'm allowed to ask a question.
Yeah, you're allowed to.
Oh, thank you. So for me, as you might remember, for me, autoethnography is, like you said, about writing about your struggle to liberate your struggle. And I totally agree with that, because for me, autoethnography is a form of therapy. I think I mentioned it in the module last year as well. But my worry, I don't know if you got any advice for us in general, is how do you avoid not upsetting other people you've included in your writing? Because the very core essence of autoethnography is, as you mentioned just now, is about talking about some cultural issues that could be quite sensitive, and it's very difficult to avoid not including other people, and they might have very different opinions to you. How do you I guess my question is, how do you deal with the relational ethics side of things?
That's very tricky. It's something that we have to have very critical reflexibility. And so probably the notion that we've been talking about, like informed consent, and what you mean by that, and when and how you're going to get it from those people you use in your data, in your story. I think that's really the one thing. So I'll say that there's 2 layers of issues there, Queen. I think you point out both well. So first of all, if you sit down and write about your experience from your own perspective, how you can say that's actually what, culturally structured experiences, because that can be your view coming from your total kind of background, and then you just interpret the entire situation for your sake. So that's why it's unavoidable to a certain extent that you member check it with the people who are in the neighboring others in that story. And sometimes those are people, it's difficult because sometimes those are people who make you suffer. So going back and asking question to them directly, I mean, hey, have you done this to me intentionally? What was you? I mean, that's something that we wouldn't really culturally do so. However, it's that at least that kind of attempt that you at least ask and get the opinions from the people who observe and they who were in the similar situation as you and colleagues who are not that person. So collecting those information from the others, or informant, we use that term, is one of the really important things that you validate, you know, or you increase the trustworthiness of your story narrative in your writing. So to do so, the second layer of issue comes in. It's not really about that person that in your mind, but all those surrounding people who you want to go and talk to. How are you going to inform that? How much you're going to tell them that what this story is about? Are you going to pretend that it's not? I mean, giving them your own view first and then ask them to talk about, and they will just agree with you. So it's a classic issue. So it has this issue of how much we're going to open about our agenda of research too. So that's like second layer of informed consent and how and when you're going to get it from those people. So those two things are things that we've been from the very beginning of designing it to end that you publish at the journal. You have to really think about throughout. And then I think at least a scholarly conclusion is that personally you feel like you're going to lose more by hurting the people who are still neighboring with you than the gain that you have, a personal kind of enlightenment or even your academic publication and so on. If the hurting part is bigger, you have to give up on it. But again, so it's difficult to measure it. I know that I'm not answering to your question at all because there's no answer to that. But, you know, only thing that we should appreciate as autoethnographer is the consequences that we may have, our writing may have upon people that we care or we don't care, but in bigger picture. And then playing those tactics or techniques as frequently as possible as we go on. And then at one point, if we have to drop our research for sake of saving something, we have to be able to, I mean, we should be ready to drop it. But it's quite dramatic. Yeah, I'll probably stop here.
Yeah, thank you. Right. I just found the relational ethics really interesting because obviously with any autoethnographies, I still can't say that word properly. I do apologize. After a year of trying to say that. Is you want to sort of, you know, get your views across and you want to get it across as strongly as possible, but it's also the sort of thinking about the feelings of people around you, your readers and the people in your story. I just found it really, that sort of struggle really fascinating.
Hi, thanks for your talk. I enjoyed it very much, and the subject matter and the format. I guess my question is, really I said two, but it's one question, I think, which is, you know, you mentioned this idea, this Foucauldian idea of power, and that, you know, often when we think that we're personally struggling, what we are is really functioning like in a larger structure of like power struggle. And so it's not as individual, you know, perhaps as like we may think it is. And what I guess my question is, you know, as you've moved from a learning designer, as a learning technologist to a TEL researcher, what do you see as those main discourses that are really, you know, really like the main levers of power, or, you know, Foucauldian sort of power knowledge?
Yeah, good question. I think it seems like you have the background of Foucault, so it's good in a way that I'll probably use knowledge and power relationship in that way. So I didn't bring up much in a way that how dangerous the knowledge creation is actually. So that like TEL practitioners practice and TEL researchers or TEL researchers knowledge creation practice are really, really closely linked. So I touched upon the discourse, more societal discourses of those claims about online learning. However, many of those claims are made by whom? By us, TEL researcher. So if you look at the critical, if you read through the publication from 1990 to all the way to 2010, a lot of TEL research are really stating and restating all those claims that we just saw on the screen. And then who wrote the textbook without having done the e-learning? Those were TEL researchers. So that's why us being critical about this tiredness of what we do and potential impact of the knowledge that we created goes into the field. So we create that, we write about, we write the text, and then practitioners, including ourselves and yourself there, is going to take it as some guidebook or Bible and try to realize. And then the things that we haven't really even done, and we just wrote there, published paper with all the hypes and possibility of that we think that we're going to achieve in near future. And then so we didn't mean to. The point here is no one is enemy here. We didn't mean to. We just did our job really diligently as based on our belief system. But that has impact upon practitioners' practice because that shaped in the way that they can function, because they can't function beyond that knowledge creation that somehow TEL field together with them sometimes created.
If I could just volunteer, I think that one of the places that you could see that is in many conferences where, especially like where you have a mix of academics and practitioners, and often you have this feeling in some conferences, you know, where like when practitioners present, they're just going, oh, well, they're just showing what I did last summer, you know, like, oh, you know, it's like, oh, that's not as good, you know, like just showing what you did. Whereas you could have almost the exact same thing done by a researcher, and they'll say, oh, well, we're doing a case study or something, you know, and then you know, it's like exciting all of a sudden. And so there is yeah, there is something funny, but and also like the way that like in a conference, often if somebody talks about online learning in a very distanced theoretical way, you know, that's kind of seen as more a higher status presentation than, again, if, you know, somebody's just like saying, hey, I redesigned the VLE.
Yeah, so I'm totally with you. So that's why it's, I think that's why TEL researcher being critical, not necessarily for sake of being critical in their writing, but being able to understand that weight of their words in some way, how they contribute to power relationship without them even knowing, aware of it. I think that's something quite important for us to remember. But unless you have a really big picture, because what we don't want is that turn this into some struggles between academics and practitioners. That's not really big picture is suggesting us. So it's not going to be like academics being some and practitioner being the other, but it's just everyone, including all the subject that I put on the slide, everyone works really hard. That's the point. And that everyone contribute to the discursive formation of TEL in their daily practice. And then that create a lot of struggles without really being able to see the big picture, how that power relationship is constructed. It's quite difficult for us to doubt, even being critical about what we're doing. It's not that I do particularly well about it, but kind of realization of that really helped. So thanks for the question.
Yeah,
good.
Could I just add another comment? I'm sorry, it's the
yeah
presentation, but you know, I think part of what you were saying too is that power struggle is already there, and so you know, we don't have to like turn it into a war, but like it's like class conflict or something. Like there already is like a class struggle, you know, and we can, like you said, either be critical or not, you know, and it's the kind of the Nietzschean like Foucauldian nature of things, that people are gonna create discourses that like allocate, or gather power for themselves. So yeah, and it's yeah, quite right. It's an absence of criticality if people don't see that.
Great, thanks.
I'm quiet now. Sorry.
That's all right. It was good. JB, is that question, or can you explain how you would go about that in your context, for example? Oh, well, so my 2017 paper was all about it. So what I have done in terms of creating new discourse is that I wrote a paper called the Rethinking Accessibility of Online Higher Education. So there are different ways in which you can do, and Foucault suggested some too. And so one of the ways that you could do is putting all the discourses together next to each other. Because if you try to look into discourses at the bigger level beyond TEL field, I mean, as we saw, the post-humanism conversation is quite divergent. There are a lot of criticality going on outside, often the TEL. And then, so collect those conflicting discourses together to define or redefine some of the concepts has been taken for granted by TEL researcher, and showing that, look, it's not probably as simple as what you think that. And so that was 2007 paper that I've tried to do. And I particularly like, in 2020 paper too, I particularly like the way that you just put two dominant discourses. So if you say online learning is innovative and you say online learning is open, and then each of them make total sense in their own. But when you put them together, actually online learning can't be open as well as innovative. If online learning use bloody technology, which is very, very expensive and not open accessible at all, actually online learning is naturally very inaccessible. So I think there's something that you could do about like the tactic like that, if you can find out. So I'll do those things.
Could you maybe add to that, what's your audience actually? So who do you expect to read your papers and change things and accept a different discourse?
You know how I'm going to answer to that question? Myself. I mean, for me, I write a paper for myself. That's the whole point for the third part, that, because a lot of paper I wrote, it was really thought experiment. And I have to say that, I am struggling myself. I'm not saying that, I'm not pretending here that I know everything. I'm just going to tell people what to do. No, every single thing that I'm puzzled all the time. So my writing is my personal practice to figure out and create the conversation narrative that makes sense to me. And then I submit it. If other people like it, that's a happy thing. But I have to say that I've never really had noble kind of agenda that I want to just enlighten other people. I have to take care of myself first. I'm like a mess. Anyway, so yeah, but audience, yeah, someone who can appreciate my thought, that's the bonus for sure.
I do.
Thanks.
I think we all do. I think, writing a paper, like you said, is for yourself first. And if someone appreciate it, great. If they don't, what are you going to do? Right. We have time for one more question or comment, or anyone would like to any last burning thoughts, anything.
I would love to hear some comments, not really question in a way that, I mean, how are you doing, guys? It's like thumbs up still, or are you like me? Aren't you tired? I mean, can you just tell me?
Definitely like you, Kyungmee. Definitely like you. Tired.
Yeah, isn't
tired,
it?
Tired.
It's
I'm
difficult
not.
to catch up.
I'm not. I didn't get out till 10 this morning.
Oh, good for you, Queen.
Well, I don't sleep at night, so
super tired. I got up at 5. No, wait, earlier than 5 a.m. this morning.
Oh wow.
No reason.
Yeah.
So, yes, very tired.
I can totally empathise with where you are, Kyungmee.
Yeah, it's great to be a tutor in the program in a way that, you know, I can have my colleagues who can appreciate. It's a really nice feeling, but it's a very difficult field to be in. I don't know how tech savvy the other people are, but I am not. It was totally a mistake for me to choose this. I can't even, you know, I don't know. So I feel quite a lot of pressure in my daily practice when people are talking about this new technology. I feel like, wow, again, come on, slow down.
Here's a question or a final sort of comment open to the floor, and you as well, Kyungmee, obviously. Do you have to be tech savvy to be a TEL researcher? Because I don't think you do.
No, you don't. I am not. That's what I'm saying. But you have to fight that. It's like you have to fight against that expectation, because that's why you feel pressured, because you feel like you have to. And it's quite, I don't know. I feel a lot of TEL scholars, at least in their writing, they come across quite TEL savvy. And they come across, they know something about AI. And I feel like I'm so outdated here, because I don't understand how this machine learn by themselves. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? But anyway, so yeah, I think you're right, but that's another kind of thing, which is that another type of discourse always make us feel struggling. That's added up. So yeah, fight against it if you're not. Good luck.
I had an interesting conversation. Just pick up on that comment, Kyungmee. I had a really interesting conversation with a computer science lecturer, a professor of computer science in our university, and his comments. We were talking about AI in inverted comments, and he was like, "That's not AI, that's machine learning." So that opened up a whole new can of worms for me. So there's lots of distinctions now forming within that field as well, which is. It just gets it. I think some of this, the TEL stuff and some of the technology stuff is just a rabbit hole sometimes that you just really don't want to go down.
Yeah.
We've got
all right. I think we have Mark. So can we get the last question and then?
Yeah.
Hi, Mark.
Can I speak on that very last point? Because so I am a techie. I've spent sort of 10 years as a computer science, probably more actually, as a computer science lecturer in part of my life and things like that. And I find that I have to fight against that as well with others' expectations, because so I come along with kind of like a lot of knowledge about IT and things like that. And I have to fight against that when I'm dealing with other people, because they are more or less expecting me so that have an expectation that they should be as knowledgeable about the tech as somebody like myself might be. And so I'm always trying to reassure people that that's not true. Yeah, because actually the most important and difficult part of achieving learning through the technology is what you do, the way you're doing it. It's the pedagogy and that stuff. The rest of it, as far as most people are concerned, you don't really need to know. You certainly don't need to know how anything works. You only need to know how to make it work. That's the thing.
Thank you so much, Mark. That's brilliant. I think that's perfect for the last comment. When we feel pressured, I think we should remember what Mark says, like it's all about pedagogy. So I appreciate that. It's good to hear from you, Mark.
Okay, I think now is the time for us to wrap up and maybe unmute ourselves to show our appreciation for Kyungmee for coming along today and share her practice. So thank you very much. So
thank you so much, guys, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.